you have to be extremely careful who you listen to, who you take guidance from, who you view as a mentor, who you take coaching from, advice from, about what to go back and do at your practice. Extremely careful. Unlike ever before, by the way, extremely careful. You have to understand that the people on stage may have a different vision than you, may have a different mission than you, may want something more different out of their life than you, run a completely different business model than you. So therefore, they're going to need different treatment modalities, different outsource partners, different ways to accomplish it than possibly you need. The reality is, just because you hear it on stage doesn't mean that it's going to work for you. And in this ongoing series, which today is part 2 of how your clinical peers are sabotaging your success without you even knowing it, today I'm going to talk about something that is very startling that I saw at an event a couple years ago with an expert panel. I use air quotes when I say that expert panel, because the ones up there talking, it's a perfect example on how they are unintentionally, so by no doubt is it with intent, but unintentionally sabotaging the businesses in the audience. And this is another reason reps listening, companies out there listening, this is why you cannot just have clinicians be your speakers. This is why you must have entrepreneurs from outside the bubble that can look at things like I'm going to talk about today and give a completely different perspective to the audience. Because make no mistake about it, your clinical peers are unintentionally sabotaging your success. And today we're going to talk about another way they're doing it in part 2 of this ongoing series on the New Patient Group podcast.
The time for real change is now. When tough times test us, we overcome. When hardship hits us, we persevere. We innovate. We transform. If you're ready to achieve something special, buckle up and get ready for the ride of your life. Welcome to Season 8 of the New Patient Group audio experience. A podcast dedicated to revolutionizing lives, careers, and business, so you, your team, and your practice forever flourish in the new economy. And now, your host. He's a husband, father of 2, a founder and CEO of New Patient Group and RightChat, faculty for Align Technology, and a trusted speaker for Invisalign and OrthoFi, Brian Wright.
Hey, New Patient Group and RightChat Nation, welcome inside the broadcast booth. Brian Wright here, and welcome in to another edition of the New Patient Group podcast. Hope you're doing great out there, everybody, and everything is rolling along in your lives and your careers and your practices. If you're watching on YouTube, as always, thumb this up, make some comments, get some good dialogue going. If you're listening on the audio experience channels out there, please write us a 5-star review on whatever experience channel you're listening to us on. As we continue growing this underground cult following, baby, we are up. The global listens are just crazy. If you look in Asia and just Australia, you're just all over the place. The global listenings are just growing like crazy. They're growing in Canada, the United States. And I owe it to all of you. So I appreciate your support as always, everybody. A couple years ago, I'm speaking at an event. And, as we go through this ongoing series, I don't want anybody, if this may be the first podcast you've ever listened to, this could be the first part of this series that you're listening to. And if you see the title, I don't believe anybody is going up on stage or creating courses that are intentionally sabotaging your success. I guess maybe somebody might be where they have ill intent. But the purpose of this ongoing series is not, hey, your clinical peers are up there on stage, the dentist you just listened to, the orthodontist you just listened to at the AAO, whatever type of doctor you are out there. They're not hopping up there and sabotaging your business on purpose. But, and this puts a great emphasis on why you must continually go outside your bubble, regardless of whatever your bubble is. If you're a chef out there that listen, because we do have restaurants that listen to this podcast, whatever it is, you've got to go beyond your industry to seek people that are true experts in the non-whatever you do, the non-dentistry, the non-orthodontics, the non-food, et cetera, et cetera. And this series really proves the point, because if you get people consistently up on stage talking about the non-food things, the non-orthodontist things, you're going to run into scenarios where people are talking about things that they are not experts in. And companies out there, I think it's a real flaw. And I have made some success over the years, not as much as I would like, but I've certainly made some success. Otherwise, the one constant at these events throughout dentistry and orthodontics, the one constant that's the outsider that is constantly speaking on stage is me. And it's something that, today's not about us, but it's something I'm very proud of, because we're able to bring in a message that really conflicts and really debunks a lot of the things that are being taught by in-industry people. And that over time has created some of the biggest names in orthodontics, biggest names in dentistry and beyond that are customers, because they are attracted to that. And when you are constantly going to events inside your bubble and only listening to people inside your bubble, this is what's going to happen. So a couple years ago, I'm speaking at this event, and it was a good event. Overall, good event. And we had some of our customers actually speaking there. Mark Olson was speaking there, a couple others. And I noticed that the final kind of show they had, the final closeout, was an expert panel. 5 or 6 doctors, and this was an orthodontic event, so 5 or 6 orthodontists were up there. And, I'm sitting in the audience and I'm listening, and, just one thing after another, these doctors are up there going, yeah, my practice is awesome, and just do it this way and you'll be fine. And my practice is growing and conversion's up and I've got no problems. And, the outsourcing has solved it all. And, blah, 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 blah. And I made it about, 30 or 40% through, and I couldn't take it anymore, because what I was watching is exactly what I teach these companies on why you have to have speakers come from with outside the bubble, because the speakers that were up there on stage, and I do think this is a speaker flaw, me included, where, if you sit back and listen to this podcast, or if you go watch me speak, or you watch a clinician speak, we can get into this habit where we make everything in our world sound so easy and beautiful and perfect. And why aren't you like us? And how come you have problems? We don't. And I do think it's a real speaker flaw. It's like the clinical speakers that get up and they only show you their great cases. All that does is demoralize and put fear into people that are maybe just getting started with clear aligners. It has the opposite effect. So if you don't get up there and show your not great cases and say, hey, this is where I started, or just last week I screwed one up, like it's going to happen to you, and here's how to avoid that. If you're not doing that, it can really have the opposite effect on an audience, because the reality is we all have problems. Like, God, we've got problems internally. It's all about paying attention to them and constantly making the employee moves that are necessary and obsessing over your customer. It doesn't mean you're not going to screw up. It doesn't mean you're not going to have screw ups. It just means that you got to stay on top of it. And I think to audiences, we can sometimes come across that everything's rosy and what the hell's wrong with you and stuff like that. And that's how this air quotes expert panel came across big time. And the reason why I got so disgusted early on in it is because every single one of those doctors that were up there acting like their life and their team and their practice, their business was perfect. Every single one of those doctors was at our booth the day before, pulling me aside, complaining about their life, their team, their practice, their business, and what a disaster it was, how it wasn't growing, conversion was down, HR problems, expenses are through the roof, can't get new patients. They all had their own issues, and then they all had a lot of similarities at the same time, but they were a lot. And I ask all of you out there, is that, do you see the problem? Like, this is, you go in as an audience member and you watch them up on stage and everything is hunky dory, but yet they're at our booth the day before saying what a mess their practice is and their life. And, one of them hadn't paid himself in like 2 years and things like that. And I will say, if you're going to have, a true expert is the one that's asking for help receiving help, realizing that they're not the know-it-all and the be-all. They're seeking guidance, they're seeking mentorship. That's an expert. An expert is also somebody that gets on stage and says, "Hey, look, I've got problems. Like right now, we're not growing, and here are the things that I'm doing, and the advice that I'm seeking, and the steps that I'm taking to make sure next year is not like this year." Hey everybody, Brian right here. Let's step away from today's podcast. Hope you are enjoying it, but let's step away for a minute and talk about our MPG mastermind group and how, the messaging today on the podcast is get yourself uncomfortable and go outside your bubble and seek the advice of famous entrepreneurs that are experts in the whatever it is that you do: sales, psychology, hospitality, verbiage, presentation, right? Just experts at owning successful businesses that produce a return on your time. So you have the time freedom as well as the financial freedom to enjoy whatever it is you want out of your life. And those are things that we dive heavily into in my mastermind group. We have the most forward-thinking doctors on the planet involved in this, and it's such a wonderful clinical think tank that advances your clinical skill sets forward, but also a business entrepreneur life think tank that is so advanced, and you will get so much out of it. And we really want you to join and make 2025 the year that you really took action and really went outside your bubble to absolutely advance your life, advance the careers of your employees, right? You get wonderful on-demand content as being a mastermind member. You get our live boot camp coaching sessions where Coach Eric and myself are coaching these things into your organization. And you get on these live sessions with our other customers that are going through the same journey. It's just an amazing, close-knit group. And there's so much more that comes with it, as well as our Wednesday sessions, our in-person event every year. You get a trip to my house with your spouse to stay with some other doctors for some great life and business sessions. It's just an amazing, amazing group of people all the way around. So make 2025 the year you took action, joined our mastermind group, and let us really take your business, your practice, your life to a whole nother level that you may have thought not even possible before. All right. So look forward to seeing you in our new patient group mastermind. There's a link to schedule with Stephanie, our director of client experiences, in the description below. Let her describe more. And if I can hop on that meeting with her if I have the time, and looking forward to seeing you soon in our mastermind group. Now let's get back to today's episode. Right. That's an expert. And unfortunately, a lot of speakers, get up there and they just want to tell you everything is so perfect. And, it goes so far beyond this too, is that, and these are for future podcasts where, audience members will go to the AAO or some dental event. And it's like you see some person speaking on stage, and the next thing you know, you're going and buying everything that they use. And you're just sitting here going, guys, the person on stage may run a totally different business model. We just talked about this, a little bit when I had Bob Skopak on to kick off this season. Is you've got to have your vision first, and then you've got to start filling in the gaps, right? You've got to know the type practice you want, the type business you want, the type life you want, and as you fill in those things, then you go out and you find people that will help you get there. You will find outsource partners, speakers, things like that, right? And that's kind of what Bob did with us, right? It's like we fit the vision of what he wanted to be in 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years. And that's why we've had this long, powerful relationship. Same way with many of our other customers is we're not an overnight fix. We don't intend to be an overnight fix. We tend to be an ongoing partnership to get you through the journey. And the journey's different every single year. But I proudly sit behind this mic and go, hey, we got problems, man. When you run, coaching and digital marketing under one roof with New Patient Group, and then over on Right Chat, what we do there and answer new patient calls for people, it requires a lot of humans. And look, humans, including me, we're not perfect. We make mistakes. So it's this ebb and flow of, okay, things are going really well. Let's stay on top of things to make sure they keep going well. And then regardless, things are going to drop off, whether it be sales, whether it be the experience our customers receive. And I have a podcast, The True Sign of an Exceptional Company, that'll come out someday. But what the premise of that is, what I'm talking about right now is the true sign of an exceptional company and a true sign of an expert is people that are on top of stuff. They fix stuff. They admit their faults. They admit things are going wrong. They make the proper HR moves, the proper ongoing, shifts in the company to make sure you get to the next level. And there should be a comfort as a customer out there knowing that you are investing in a leadership team like with New Patient Group that's always going to be on top of it. Doesn't mean we're going to be perfect. Doesn't mean there's not going to be issues, but we will always get them fixed. Whether it be overnight or in 6 months, they're always going to be fixed. See, those are things that make up an expert. An expert panel is not, 5 or 6 people sitting on stage telling you everything's perfect, just do it my way. And yet the day before they're at the booth complaining their life and business is a nightmare, right? You really have to watch everybody who you're listening to. And it could be for a couple reasons. It could be, like I said, you may be listening to somebody who their practice is rocking and rolling, but it's an entirely different business model and they want completely different things out of their life and their practice than you, right? That is not a person. Doesn't mean that you can't listen, but it is not a person that's going to get you where you need to be. And then as the example I use today, it could be a person telling you everything's great, just do what I do. Meanwhile, their life and their practice is an absolute disaster. And like I said, a true expert would get up there and say that to the audience and then say, this is how I'm making it better. That's an expert. An expert is not what I just described, who's complaining at the booth and, saying, hey, we listen to your podcast, we're trying to do this, and, we need further. It's just not, if they would have gone up on stage and said those things, okay, great, now they're an expert. But just be careful, everybody. And this is how, and I do, again, think with most people, it's unintentional, but this is how your people in your bubble, your clinical peers, and I also see it with consultants that are in this industry that have no other experience outside of it, right? Like a hotel or a restaurant wouldn't hire them in a million years to teach the equivalent of the same thing they go around inside orthodontics, as an example, or dentistry to teach. And they are teaching things that are against the psychological definitions that I know exist. And the way the consumer is changing. And I just sit there and listen to some of them on stage. I was at an event earlier this past year in 2024 and listening to some consultants on stage. And I'm just like, oh my God, like you are teaching people things that are going to ruin them when the economy's there, when tough times are tough, et cetera. But they don't know what they don't know. And there are things that I don't know what I don't know. There's things all of you don't know what you don't know, right? It happens to all of us, but you just need to be careful who you're following out there, everybody. And you need to make sure that your vision is set. You've got the treatment modalities and things picked out on the business side that are going to help you get there. And then you're going to go out and buy from the outsource partners and follow people like, and it may not be me, right? I may want and envision something for all of you that is different than what you want. If that's the case, you need to be very careful about what I teach on here, right? So that's how it works. Just be careful, everybody, because your clinical peers are sabotaging unintentionally your success out there, and you've got to be very, very careful who you listen to, who you follow, all right? Thanks so much, everybody, for listening. And as always, appreciate your support. Until next time, we'll see everybody soon. Bye-bye.